sort of piggybacking on that idea, I think a lot of the anti-choice legislation that's been passed at the state level in recent years has sort of been done so quietly and in boring ways that don't grab headlines. So, changes to budget or, these policy ideas that people might not pay attention to in everyday life. And I'm wondering what are the strategies in this moment that we should be implementing to sort of push back on those those strategies that aren't grabbing as much attention but are having very real impacts for women.
I was just going to say, you're absolutely right on this insidious line budget, anti-democratic process. It's very much alive and well in many of the states that we're part of, that we're working in. We're doing a fair pay campaign with called Equal Pay Today with partners across the country. And what we see in the budget items is really, the maximum family grant rule was actually a budgetary rule in California that wound up, putting millions of kids into poverty. And what we're trying to do is really elevate budget items on our agenda, including bad budget items, as part of our voter education process and our organizing process. Because you're right, it's completely under the radar. It's in this very expedited time frame that these budget line items go through. And the fact is that there are many state budgets that have billions of dollars in surplus right now, and yet we're thinking that we're living in an area of in a time of scarcity for women's issues, right? And so really having a handle of the budget and the possibilities and the dangers are really critical, I think, to our democracy.
And I think it's also critical that we support a proactive policy agenda rather than just playing defense as opponents of reproductive choice try to move their policy agenda through the legislatures and the courts. Defense is important, but sometimes the best defense is a good offense. And I think just as for years, our opposition seemed to have a head start in terms of political organizing and operating at the grassroots level. I think they've also had a head start in terms of having a proactive agenda, and they were advancing restrictive bills in states and through Congress at a time when they had no chance of actually getting them enacted, but they were there year after year reintroducing those bills, trying to get a hearing, trying to get more co-sponsors, and then over time, as the composition of those legislative bodies changed, they were well positioned to get those measures signed into law. And so I think, we think now, well, with the current state of our Congress, we're not, we can't get anything enacted, much less reform measures. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be laying the groundwork now, because Congress changes over time. Lots of things change over time. So we need to do the work now to make sure that when those changes happen, we are poised to take advantage of them. And so there are some bills right now pending at the federal level. There is a bill called the Women's Health Protection Act that has dozens of co-sponsors in both the House and the Senate that would prohibit states from enacting laws that single out abortion for special regulation that's different and more burdensome than medical procedures of comparable risk. There's another bill that's been introduced in the federal Congress called the Each Woman Act, which would essentially repeal the Hyde Amendment, which is a federal law that says that no federal funds can be used to support abortion services. And what it means in practice is that women who rely on the federal government for their health insurance, so women in the military, women who work at the post office and other civilian government agencies, women who work at the National Archives, as well as women on Medicaid, are unable to get health insurance coverage for safe abortion care. And the Each Woman Act would reverse that. So I think we need to keep putting our support behind these measures and keep encouraging our own representatives to support these measures and similar measures that are being introduced at the state level.
And there's really incredible energy around the Repeal Hyde movement right now. It's very exciting.
Just one thought about words. they got the word pro-life and ran with it. And I think that gave them such an advantage. And it's now become the term. And I think, along with all these other things, we've got to redefine what we're talking about. And they're anti-choice. They're not pro-life.